Joining me here in the studio, Housing and Planning Minister Matthew Pennycook. Good morning to you.
Morning.
We'll get on to your brief in a second and the infrastructure investment that you're keen to talk about this morning. Just on that last point, the agenda at the moment, certainly when it comes to immigration being set by Reform, constantly putting these stories out there. Do you need to work harder to remind people how immigration can benefit the country? Because it certainly seems that all this noise makes out that it's all bad.
Well, I think we have been open and we need to be open about the fact, yes, we have to fix the broken asylum and immigration system we inherited. That's what we're doing. But we've also got to be clear, we need controlled migration into this country, and that migrants who come here legally and make a contribution add something to our society and to our economy. Now, it's absolutely right that when we're looking at settlement, that it's a privilege, not a right. We've set out very sensible proposals in our immigration white paper to ensure that that right is earned. We've proposed increasing the standard qualifying period for indefinite leave to remain from 5 to 10 years, but with an option to reduce that if you're making a clear contribution. We think that's a sensible approach. But Reform's proposals, A, are unworkable. As usual, they've failed to survive contact with reality. The think tank that put the numbers out said that they shouldn't be used. But more importantly, I think it'd be deeply damaging. It would cause a lot of human misery, it would tear families apart, and it would really impact our economy. As you referenced, lots of essential workers who come here through controlled migration routes, settle and are making a contribution, but also global talent coming through. And I think the really extreme proposals they put out, a retrospective ending of indefinite leave to remain. Some people have been in this country on ILR for decades. These are friends, neighbours, husbands, wives. So I think it's both unworkable and damaging. And we will continue to make very clear the benefits of controlled immigration, but at the same time, we've got to get a grip and fix the system. We've got to clamp down on illegal migration.
Let me come at it from two perspectives. If people have been here for decades on indefinite leave to remain, why not make them citizens? Why not give them the British passport? Why not make that more straightforward for them?
There is a process. It's fairly straightforward, and they can go down that route. But some haven't. But they have. But the point of ILR is that they have that settlement. They've got it legally. They've applied for it. As I say, we've put proposals out in our white paper to reform that process. We think it should be extended. We think people should be, earn the right to reduce that 10-year thing through their contributions. But these people who come here illegally, I just think, follow through what would happen. I don't think it's workable, like so many reform policies, but follow through what would happen. Husbands, wives deported, people who are manning our NHS, people who are doing essential work, global talent we need to grow the economy in the country. It's deeply damaging and it's unworkable.
So you would welcome the Lib Dems' idea of attracting cancer scientists from the US on cheaper visas then?
We're looking at the visa situation for that global talent route. We've got to make it as easy as possible for those people to come in. We want to attract them to take up those jobs. But through the ILR route, we need people that do other essential work. You referenced rightly, our health service and other things where people are making a real contribution and a contribution to our society more generally. As I said, these are our friends and neighbours. These are people who've come through a legal route. They've done everything right and they're making a contribution.
A lot of the problem people have with illegal migration, people coming over on small boats, is they believe they are getting more in benefits than people who are living here already. Why not turn that on its head and allow those people, while they wait for their asylum applications to be processed, to work and pay their way and pay taxes?
That's not the government's position. We think that would act as... for the reasons I'm about to give you, we think it would act as a further incentive for people to come into this country illegally, not through legal routes. And so that is not the government's position. But ILR, as we come back to, that settlement process, which we're seeking to change, increasing that standard qualifying period from 5 to 10 years, is the right way to come in and make a contribution to this country. And we need to attract the right people in, and where they're making a contribution, that should be recognised.
I appreciate your brief is housing and planning, and you want to talk about investment in infrastructure today. You say you're doing a great job of that. Explain how.
Well, in our plan for change, we committed to rebuilding Britain by fast-tracking decisions on major infrastructure projects. And I can confirm today that's exactly what we've done. We've honoured that commitment. We've green-lighted the largest number of such projects in the first year of any parliament. 21 in our first year in office, up to 25 now. And that is not just a procedural matter, that has real-world consequences for working people across the country in terms of lower energy bills, shorter commutes, cheaper flights, more secure water supplies. And our ambition is to go much, much further. The previous government only took 57 such decisions in its whole period in office. We've got a target of 150 decisions on these major infrastructure projects. We're on course for that, given the decisions we've taken. Decisive decisions. These are not sitting on ministers' desks for months on a time as they were in the last Parliament. We're getting them through the system, and we're making changes to the planning system, not least through the Planning and Infrastructure Bill, to ensure that consenting process for major infrastructure projects is far smoother, far quicker.
And I know some of the planning is around things like wind farms, so it certainly sounds like you're still wedded to net zero aspirations. How does a third runway at Heathrow and another one announced, or certainly the expansion of one announced at Gatwick, lend itself to tackling the environmental crisis?
Well, I think in terms of the government's position on Heathrow, we support a third runway. We've invited proposals over the summer for that, as you know. But any application would have to be compatible with the following. Not only would it have to contribute to economic growth, it would have to be compatible with our legally binding climate change targets. And it would have to meet very strict environmental standards, not least on air quality and noise pollution. So they're the conditions for an application. But the government's position is we want that application to come in.
But growth is your main aim, right? And it's not exactly being achieved right now. So certainly...
Well, I dispute that. We're the fastest growing economy in the G7 in the first half of this year. There's lots of other figures I could give you.
And growth now?
And growth now, there is lots of signs to point to growth. Obviously, we weren't going to turn around a decade of stagnant economic growth overnight, but there are the green shoots there. And the proposals I've mentioned today, those 25 projects we've green-lighted, that's a direct contribution to growth. That's tens of thousands of jobs and billions of pounds into our economy. And that's why it's so important that we're making timely decisions. We're making more of these decisions across the country in terms of those large infrastructure projects in particular to get growth going.
Quick change of tack to finish. Are you a dad?
I am a dad, yeah.
Yeah, so you have a partner who's had a baby. You'll be well aware that how much information pregnant mums are bombarded with when they get pregnant. So what's your reaction to Donald Trump in the US linking the taking of Tylenol, or Paracetamol as we know it in this country, during pregnancy to autism?
I choose my words carefully here. I think in any policy decision, I do this in my own department, but we've got to be led by the evidence. And the fact is that any such link at the moment is unproven. And it's really important more generally, I'm talking about children with autism, which mine have not got, just to be clear, that we get the right support in place. That's why we've invested an additional £1 billion into the SND system. That's why we're giving local councils an additional £740 million so they can put more specialist provision into mainstream schools. But on that particular point in the President's suggestion, let's be led by the science.
Yeah. Look, I know you're not the Health Secretary, I know you're not the Chief Medical Officer, but that would be your advice to pregnant mums: follow the science, follow the current advice.
Follow the science. There's NHS advice and guidance on the website about paracetamol use in general.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.